today we're going to paint a simple wreath, and you can pause this video anytime and catch up if you start getting behind. I did edit some things out because it was over 40 minutes long, but for the most part, it's in real time. Begin by painting the rim of a cup or a glass and press that glass or cup into the paper several times in a couple different places. Then you're going to go back in with the same paintbrush that you painted the rim of your glass or bowl with, and you're going to add some little sticks. Now you can do this in green. I like doing it in brown and then adding all my greens, but that's up to you. One of the things that I think is really important to know is that you have to keep turning your paper, because ideally the wreath, all the flowers are going to be going pretty much in the same direction, and it's easiest to do that if you are turning the wreath. So we're going to start by adding the lightest color. So you're going to take your favorite colors of green, and you can mix that with yellow and blue, or you can obviously use just a green. And you're going to do our more watered down version to start with, and then we're going to add more colors and more depth in all of the colors as we go. So I like to go in and go all the way around and add a bunch of the same color. And then I will usually use maybe a different color or a darker color. And that's when I go in and add more detail. So as you're painting around the wreath and you come back around to things that you painted a few minutes ago, they're going to be drier and it's going to be easier to add depth of color to what you're doing. So I like to start with the lightest of green and move my way up. And at this point, you can also add longer leaves. This wreath in particular has kind of long pokey leaves that I recently saw on a wreath on someone's door. So that's what I'm emulating, but you are free to do whatever kind of leaves you want. And the more variety that you put in, the prettier it will be to your eye later on when you're done. At this point, it's a little bit hard to see because of the brightness of the light, but this green that I'm coming back in with is just a shade darker. And I like to add deeper greens. I like to add a little bit more blue to add variety. And when I come in and do the last bit of green at the very end for real kind of dimension, I will actually add a little bit of black to my green so that I'm getting darker and darker as I go. And I have a dog, so I have to pull the dog hair off sometimes. You'll notice here, I'm not doing anything fancy. These are just basic leaves. And there are a lot of artists out there who have way more, education when it comes to art and color theory and all the things. I don't have any of that. I just play around until I like what I get. But I will tell you that the most simple little leaves are the ones that I love the most once I add the depth. And some artists will sit and have you practice just the leaves and kind of like an exercise sheet. And I respect that, but I would rather create something that I want to look at during my practice. So in the beginning, I just counted it all as practice. I wasn't going to do anything with any of it. I was just going to paint. And as time went by, I started enjoying what it looked like, and I wanted to share with people. And I started sharing my journey on Facebook. But then my favorite thing was sending it to people. There was a friend who had cancer, and I sent her some. I sent some to some of my seniors that I love, and my mom, just different people in my life. And they were very gracious to accept them, even though they were far from perfect. And one of my best friends was just lovely until her whole house was filled with botanicals, and she said, I really wish you would learn to paint something different. But one of the reasons that I love botanicals is that no one is coming after me saying this leaf shouldn't be next to this flower. There is a lot of artistic interpretation when it comes to botanicals. And so whether I'm doing leaves or flowers or whatever, sometimes I don't do things that are exactly the way God made them, and that's okay. You can be creative. That's the whole point of art, right? When in doubt, just add more leaves. I mean, honestly, to me, it's the answer to everything. I've done a lot of Christmas wreaths, and I actually sold some to friends for Christmas cards and such. And the ones that people seem to like the most are the ones that are just crowded with foliage. And having some variety in that foliage makes it more fun to look at. And I think sometimes it's okay to have similar numbers of leaves and keep things symmetrical, but it's really nice to just have some wonkiness too, and that's okay. So if your leaves are not perfect, that's fine. And as you're going along with your darker green, you're going to come back in and just add a little bit of shading, little dots of color, maybe at the center near the stem. And sometimes if the line is too bright or too dark, I'll dip into some water and lighten it up. You always can use a paper towel to blot off color. You will definitely see me doing this when I start adding on the colored flowers. But watercolor is very forgiving in that way, that you can very gently kind of erase it with just water. But embrace your mistakes. You do not need to be perfect. You're not being graded. This is just about relaxing and enjoying yourself. You can copy what I'm doing exactly. Or if you're like me, I can never copy exactly what I'm watching. I just don't have the ability to do that. I do my own interpretation of everything. And that's fine too. Whatever you do is fine. Just keep going. Here I have added some little sprigs in more of a bluish green color. And then I'm going back in and making the leaves kind of these little round leaves. And I like having some distinction from the other leaves, and I like having something that's a little bit of a different shape and a little different color. I just think that adds something to it. You can use yellows, you can use blues. I've actually seen some very beautiful wreath paintings that have a lot of like browns and yellows that are beautiful for fall. Just use the colors that you like, but I'm staying very close to greens on the initial leaves that I'm putting all over this wreath. I'm glad you're painting with me. It's nice to have someone to paint with, right? I don't have any music or anything going on, and I didn't put any on this video, and I'm not going to, because I want you to be able to listen to what you want to listen to. You can turn the sound off if you don't want to listen to me. Listen to a podcast, listen to music. I don't know, you might be able to do all of it at once. I can't. I really like silence, though. Silence is my friend. So you can see on my palette, I have these different greens. I started out with a basic green, and then I've added a little bit of brown to some, a little bit of black to others, and of course some blue. And you can add yellow to brighten it up. And I really enjoy, I mix up colors in the beginning, but then I just keep adding to those colors so that I can get the deeper values that I want for the details. Just keep adding more details, more color, more depth. You'll be surprised. You might think that you're done and things look the way you want them to look, but if you just go in and add a few more dots of color, you'll find sometimes that it just looks better and better, especially when it comes to leaves. I find that leaves especially appreciate more layers. Now I'm adding some little dots of yellow, and I'm going to go back in and add little green lines between those dots to connect them. So that's just basically a stem of little flowers. And I'm starting with yellow to brighten up my wreath. And I got this idea from a wreath that I saw on someone's door, and it was so pretty that I took a picture, and I decided I wanted to have these long pieces of stems that have different colors on them, just standing out from the wreath. And I really like the effect that it gives. So I'm going in and putting just some basic yellow in first, and then I'm going to come in and do another little layer of basically the same color. And then finally, I'm going to add in kind of a mustardy color into the yellow so that there is the center of each flower kind of stands out. So again, this is time consuming, but it's not hard. Are you surprising yourself yet that it looks probably better than you thought it would? And you know what? Don't stop. If you mess up, just keep going. You can throw stuff away, of course. There's no reason not to. But I really like to keep going and see if I can kind of fix something if I don't like the way it looks. Like I said, you can pick up color while it's still wet pretty easily with a dry paper towel or a little bit of water to lighten it up. And sometimes you can paint over it after it dries. But honestly, even the things that you make mistakes on, a lot of times if you give that piece to someone, they're not even going to notice. But it's okay to not be perfect. Letting go of perfection is part of the point to me. It's what I've learned through watercolor. You can obviously fast forward this video, or you can go back and watch anything you want to watch again, and you can turn down the volume if you don't want to hear me talking to you. So I'm going in now and putting in some pink flowers. I love pink. I'm really in my pink era, I guess. I love painting pink. So, and I like the way the pink and the yellow and the purple look together. So there's just something about all those colors together that makes me happy. So I'm adding just little blobs, little leafy little blobs, and it starts looking more like flowers when you go in and add the center of the flower later on. But just try it. Just little strokes, little blobs. I find that using a very small brush helps me. I like painting small. I mean, quite frankly, when you're painting small, it can just be little blobs that look like flowers. And you can do that when it's big too, but I think they look more like flowers when they're tiny. It's just a preference. But you can do this exact same painting on a much bigger piece of paper and use a plate and trace around it to make the wreath shape if you want. I've done bigger ones, but I just love the small ones. So now we're adding in some purple. You can mix your own purple. You can use a purple that's in the palette And I tend to change whatever color I find in the palette. I either lighten it up or I add a complementary color to kind of perk it up, but you do you. This is definitely the time that more is more. You know, some people say less is more, but I think when it comes to flowers, and especially a wreath, more is more. So I just keep going. You'll notice that I'm not using a drying tool. You can use a drying tool to get everything perfectly dry before you add more to it. That's definitely an option. If you add wet on wet, it makes it more loose and kind of blobby, and you get more detail if you let it dry more. But when it comes to a wreath, I'm usually turning it around and around and adding more and more details. And so when I make it back around the other side or go back to a color that I've put down for a second, that has dried. So again, that's one of the advantages of painting small. The larger you're painting, the longer it takes to dry. And using a drying tool is a great way to get everything completely dry so that you can be touching the edges. So if you're painting something large, I definitely advise using like a hairdryer or a little heat tool. Now you saw that I made a mistake and just kind of wanted to lift up some color, and I always have a paper towel in my hand ready to sop up anything that I don't like. And sometimes I just want it to be a little more subtle, and so if it's a little too much already, then I will just kind of dab it up. I definitely do that with certain flowers that I'm painting. And you know, I think that the longer you paint and the more confident you feel, the more you realize that everybody makes mistakes and it's part of watercolor. Now here I grabbed another palette that had a deeper red that I'd been using to paint some other things. And I tend to use these little plates and hang on to my palettes for a long time. Some people will rinse their plates off and, wash them off and start over the next day. I don't like to do that because I got some of the colors that I really love by mixing things from different palettes. And, I just like the continuation of it all and how you can just keep adding more depth. So I'm going to add in some little tiny thin lines of green to connect these little flower colors and make the stems. And so I got some darker green and then I tested it out. I'm using a very fine brush. And you can use whatever you're comfortable with, but I really, really love these tiny, tiny brushes. And I get a lot of my brushes from Hobby Lobby. I've ordered some online. I've gotten some from like Grabby, and honestly my favorite brushes, and I'm not using them in this painting, but my favorite brushes are Emily Lex brushes. Love her paper, love her brushes, love her work. I think she's incredible. But I have gotten brushes that I liked in the cheapest, dollar store as well. So you don't have to have anything expensive. You just need to have something that makes things look the way you want them to look. I'm adding in the deepest greens now, just adding in depth, not just lines on the leaves, but little teeny tiny dots to just kind of indicate some shrubbery. And I love how that looks, especially around the flowers. And I've been looking more at real flowers, and I've noticed that there's always a shadow under flowers, so that's where I like to put my darkest colors. But again, you're the artist and you can do it however you want to do it. If you're watching this on a phone, at any point you can pause and enlarge the picture so you can see more detail. You can also watch this on a television or a computer screen to see a little bit more detail. But this is where, to me, the magic happens. Those final touches of darker color. I really appreciate you watching today. If you've made it this far, thank you for watching. Even if you had to fast forward a couple times or go back, I appreciate you watching. I'd love to hear what you think. I would love your feedback in the comments. Remember, I am not a trained artist. I am just someone who is figuring it out, just like you, but I would love your feedback. If you follow me on Facebook and you've seen anything that I've painted and you'd like me to do a tutorial of that, give me a like and follow and comment and let me know what it is that you want me to paint. So we've been painting, I don't know, a little under 30 minutes, and hopefully you have created something that you're proud of. And I'm proud of you just for trying something different, because honestly, if we keep on just doing what we know we're good at and we never try something new, then we're not taxing the part of our brain that we really need to. Painting is good for your brain. It's good for your heart. Thank you so much for joining me. Share your pictures below. I want to see.